The caterhamracer.com Season 5 Championship is sponsored by Just Add Lightness, high-performance LED lights and accessories for the Caterham 7. By Design and Display Structures, immerse yourself in worlds beyond with bespoke projection screens. And by DPR Motorsport, your competitive advantage, also in association with Darren Burke, Performance Driver Coach. So, good evening once again, everybody that's watching. Of course, you know there's a apparently rather important football match going on, but for those who are watching, we're glad to have you with us. This is round number 3 of the Season 5 of caterhamracer.com, which is pretty much virtual catering racing alongside the real-world Caterham Motorsport factory-back championship calendar. And we've headed to pretty much, I think, arguably the centrepiece of the season. What we've not just, I guess, for in this championship, but also for in real life, because it's not just at Silverstone, but it is on the full Grand Prix circuit, which takes place next weekend, where all 5 Caterham Motorsport Championships are going to be out in action. Scott Woodwiss and Chris Hutchinson back on commentary once again. And Chris, of course, you'll be here in a couple of weeks, in next weekend, for real, to give this circuit a go. But I think in many cases, if there's 2 circuits in the UK that anyone wants to race at, in terms of club level stuff, arguably, there's the 2 that everyone wants the most. It's Brandtat's Grand Prix circuit, which arguably is number 1, I think. But number 2 is usually Silverstone Grand Prix, and at least now this is a great chance for them to start preparing for what should be a fantastic weekend next weekend at the home of British Motorsport.
Yep, good evening everybody. It absolutely is. You see all your, for years, obviously a little bit of bumping and budging on the Hanger Straight there. For years you watch all your sort of, your heroes race around the track, and it's just great being able to pull up there and you're pulling your trailer behind you and know that you're going to go racing around the full Grand Prix track. And that's going to happen for a lot of Caterham racers for real next week. But this week we are turning laps around our virtual race, so some of our drivers getting some practice in early doors, which is always very useful.
Yeah, and of course there'll be a few drivers here who are competing tonight that will also be transferring anything they learned from tonight towards real life racing. There's Freddie Chiddix, who'll be one of them. He's one of this year's academy drivers and quite a quick peddler at that. So good to see Freddie out here tonight amongst many. And of course, there's many familiar names from those that we either watched over the last few seasons and also the last couple of weeks in this 5th season of the championship. Let's just quickly recap on where we're heading to throughout the season. We've already been to the first 2 rounds at Donington Park. That was on the 27th of April, and then Knock Hill, which was our previous meeting. Fantastic real-world racing. If you get a chance to go and watch back all the racing from Knock Hill on both either the BRSC live stream or the Caterham live streams on Facebook and YouTube, please go and do so, because it was brilliant racing from start to finish, from the academy all the way through to the 7 championship UK cars. And you'll also find that there's a familiar duo on commentary for a couple of the races, because you were gracious enough to Chris to, alongside your 420 our commitments, you also managed to jump in the com box for a few races myself, and it was like a regular evening at caterhamracer.com, wasn't it?
Oh, it's brilliant. I loved it, and it was really nice to see how it all works in the real world. It was good to get on stream, and like you say, they're available now for rewatching on across YouTube and various channels, so it's good.
And then, of course, after Silverstone GP, we're heading to Brands Hatch Indy, then followed by Croft, Snetterton, and then Cadwell Park to round things out in the real world season, of course. But the schedule is usually always, it's the Tuesday 2 weeks before the real life meeting, so it gives a proper chance to some of the real world drivers who may be competing at that one to get a little bit of extra sim time competitively against the mix. Although I think there might be one or two, most of tonight's contingent is for the drivers who either don't race Caterhams anymore in real life or aren't planning to for any time soon, in terms of being real world Caterham drivers on the road, in terms of race drivers, what I can see on the list that we have. Let's actually take a look at the standings coming into the weekend, because of course it's been quite a busy couple of weeks with points flying in left, right and centre for everyone involved. And so after 4 races already, it is David Rowe who leads the points, but only by 2. It's quite a tight margin at the top of the points. Just 6 separating the top 4 drivers, with David Rowe leading, Tom McEwing and Christian Szaruta tied for second. Very impressive for Tom, given the fact that he hasn't actually won a race yet, but he's come as close as finishing in second at the first race at Donington Park. And then we have Steve McMaster with 182 points. Szaruta and McMaster, forgive me, are on tied at 182. But impressively, I think, Chris, Tom McEwing hasn't won a race yet, but the 2 drivers immediately above and below him have. So again, it is one thing we keep on talking about is consistency in the championship. And both David Rowe and Christian Szaruta had an off round that was ironically both at the first race. It was at the
first race at Donington Park, but Tom McEwing has kept in some consistent results, and he hasn't finished lower than 5th, which actually means he really is doing pretty well. But he has finished 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th now. He just needs a win if he can manage it tonight to get himself up there and potentially get the full set.
Yeah, he just wants one of the bigger pots, doesn't he? And like you say, the consistency might well be key by the end of this season. But we've been sharing around the wins quite a lot at the moment. We've obviously been running with the Academy car so far. This is the first evening that we're running in the 420 spec, so from the 2020 car. So it's not with the latest one with the slicks on. So they're not running with full grip that we've got this year, but nevertheless they're very much more capable cars than the Academy cars that we've been running with so far as speed goes. And we've been sharing around, and everyone's been having a jolly old time collecting pots. So what we're going to see tonight, whether the 420R will see a different set of winners, I'm not sure, but ultimately, consistency over the whole season is going to pay dividends in the end.
Yeah, we should clarify for those who are watching, the kind of specification of the 420R we have tonight is equivalent to what the Championship had up until the end of last season. The 2021 version is in the works, of course, thanks to our brilliant work from Bonobro and also from Jaroslav Cherny, their work behind the scenes, along with all the feedback they get from all the drivers that compete at caterhamracer.com, which makes it extra realistic, as plenty as it can make it. But these cars, of course, incredibly quick. I've been very privileged to have the chance to drive a 2020 spec 420R race car early before the start of the season at the development day for Caterham. It's quite a machine. There's not many things that take my breath away being a commentator, but it really did have me a little bit stunned for a few minutes after I drove it. And it really is a fantastic machine to drive. And so, going back to kind of the fact we've been switching cars between Academy and 420R, Chris, we've said this a number of times before, but there are some drivers who tend to favour the Academy car. There are those who favour the 420R, but there are also the rare couple that can adapt and can handle both in terms of the difference in pace, in speed, in grip, in acceleration, and handling, and all important things. Is there's a bit of self-destruction going on behind Andy Parker, which is rare because he's normally involved in it, unfortunately, rather than being in front of it. No disrespect, but even so, it's interesting to see that will be interesting to see which drivers, and not just in qualifying, but throughout the 2 races we've got tonight, which ones truly seem to prefer the 420R, which ones maybe not so much, which ones seem to be able to adapt to each car no matter which one they drive at what point in the season.
Yeah, I mean, their cars have very different dynamics. Obviously, the speed's different, the grip level's different, how they handle out there on the track is different. So yeah, definitely drivers tend to have a preference one way or the other, but you're right, some of them are able to master both, and we've seen Szaruta out there in front, and he had a double win at Knockhill. He's certainly got to grips with both of them, and he's actually been trading fastest laps through the week with Andrew Parker, who we're watching on the screen now, and it's a shock to see him down in 11th at the moment. He certainly won't want to be staying down 11th. That's why I was following him around that lap, but he only moved up a couple of spaces. You saw the issues that were I think Mike Hilton and David Rowe had a bit of a coming together just behind him. So yeah, whether he can ping up there with 4 minutes left to go in qualifying, because it's such a long lap, he's probably only got one more chance.
It's very true. It's obviously it's not a short lap here at the Donington Grand Prix circuit. Whole time, as you can see, currently set by Christian Szaruta at 2 minutes 24.308. Here's the man currently in 3rd quickest, Guy Crawford, who again keeps on cropping up in these very high positions on the grid, and it's impressive for somebody who doesn't race one of these Caterhams in real life, but he certainly drives one, so he knows exactly what the dynamics are of the car in real life. He heads his way out through Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel, and it's interesting to see how that works. Just a couple of drivers that I do want to point out that we haven't really seen too much of. I think are making their first Grid A appearance of the season, correct me if I'm wrong, but we've got Graham Hopkins is one of them. There he is on screen, right on cue. I think someone's just a bit of a spin or just kicking up the tyre smoke in front of him. So Graham Hopkins making his first appearance of the season in the A grid, which is good to see. He's currently sat in 17th quickest at the moment, so 3 seconds off the pace. But as I say, this will be his first time in the 420R in the A grid, so of course pace differences to be expected. The other one I noticed that's making his first appearance tonight, I think, is Michael Coomber, who is down in 38 points overall. There he is in his kind of pretty much multicoloured machine. And it looks very reminiscent of the old school, even the Renault Lagunas from 1997, the yellow and blue with a bit of red in there. So good to see him on the grid, and actually performing pretty well up in P12 and doing quite a stellar job as it happens at the front. In terms of the overall fastest times, as you can see, we're talking about Andy Parker. Either he's tuned in or he's suddenly woken up in this session, because he was about roughly 11th position. He's now shot up the order to third quickest, so only 4/10 off pole position. But it seems as though at least the top 5 are looking pretty close. There's a bit of a gulf of a fastest time for Christian Szaruta, Chris, but then behind him, second to fifth, incredibly close, separated by just a fraction under a tenth of a second. So Christian looks as though he's got maybe the outright pace if he's able to keep it up into the race. But for the rest of the podium places downwards, provided they don't get too close to each other, this could be incredibly night tonight in terms of drivers fighting for the podium places.
Yeah, the rumor is on the out on the grapevine that this is going to be a close race no matter what. The tow is very powerful. If you're following a faster driver through the whole lap, you will generate yourself a nice time gap, and I think that's probably what Christian's managed to do. The 24.3 is probably one of the fastest laps we've seen on the service all week, so again, he's pulling out a quick time when he needs it. And to be fair, the 0.3 slower than that is still an incredibly quick time, so as he loses a little bit out of Copse there. Rear end just going loose when you hit that AstroTurf, so it does punish you if you go off a bit too wide. But Silverstone being such a big wide open track, you will see the drivers judiciously using judicious use of those curbs, and we just have to keep an eye on it. Normally, yes, you are punished if you go too wide though, and you will see dust kicking up, and at that point you're starting to lose grip on the tyres, which is suboptimal.
Of course, that's going to be crucial. Of course, these guys, if the curbs and the AstroTurf is that slippery on the exit corners like Copse, it could spell trouble for some drivers that like to kind of use all the tracking a little bit more in searching for lap times or at least advantage on track as much as they can. So that's going to be something that's going to be quite crucial for them to watch out for. David Rowe, who of course comes into the weekend, or into the evening, top on points, 188 as we mentioned, has already had a win. That was in the second race at Donington Park, and then he had a couple of wins at Knockhill, but he was always chasing Christian Szaruta in that second one. Of course, Christian's results up until Knockhill had been well outside the top 5, then his other best result behind that I think was a 5th position.
And if you remember, David Rowe missed a gear coming out the last corner, which is what gifted Christian the double win. So until he was actually, a couple of thousandths off the winning pace. So yeah, he missed out on a win there. So he could have been doing even better than he is now.
Well, it's a slender margin he has to try and hold on to, and at the moment he's got to try and defend that from 5th on the grid, which is, I'm sure, definitely not where he wants to be. Yes, he is very close to the cars in front, like Andy Parker, Steve McMaster, and indeed Guy Crawford, who's put in a stellar final effort, it looks like, to get a little bit closer to Christian Szaruta. It'd only be 0.33 of a second off, split the gap, split the front row between Christian Szaruta and Steve McMaster. But David Rowe's got some work to do from the third row of the grid, and he'll have Richard Gallagher alongside him, who's been kind of heads the next trio of cars, which is in the mix. You've got Richard Gallagher, Tom Willis, who's good to have him back on the grid, and then James Fowler, who is one of Tom's fellow academy graduates from 2019 in the real world. So that's one in the mix. A couple more cars still waiting to finish their lap times. It looks like we're using the actual proper Grand Prix lap, including the wing complex, because heading across the pit straight there at Copse, we're in the middle of a lap time. So it's going to be one to watch out for, to see the run down towards Abbey Corner rather than Copse, and they'll be approaching Copse on the first lap much quicker than they would normally if they were starting on the Heritage Pit, as it's called. Steve McMaster turns his way through Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel, and his homage to the Ford GT40 from the Ferrari versus Ford Le Mans 66, whatever it's called, tribute film. So he's got the duck egg blue with the red wings on the front to signify the red stripes that are across the wheel arches on that car. Here's a car you can't miss on track, and that's John Lang, who is another driver that has been getting steadily quicker and quicker, and he's now put himself into a rhythm, and he's now, looking at the times, very much in and amongst the top 10 runners. If you look at where they are, the next big group that's been shuffled around is James Fowler, Steve Arnell, John Lang, and then Tom McEwing down 11th place ahead of Freddie Chiddick. So lots going on in the mid-pack, and I suspect this won't just be tight at the front, but I suspect there'll be a breakaway pack of about 5, maybe 6 cars. But in the midfield fight, Chris, looks as though, based on qualifying times, it's going to be mighty competitive, as it always has been in the first 2 meetings.
Yeah, it does look a mighty sight, and as the tow is so strong around here, you will see them all clinging into a pack, I imagine. So there is a high risk of issues, but I mean, I'm sure they will be able to cope with it nicely. But there you go. That's the end of qualification.
It is, and here's how the grid then is set for race number 1 here tonight on the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. So Christian Szaruta then will start on quite a commanding pole position by over 0.3 of a second. He'll have Guy Crawford alongside him on the front row. Then very evenly matched cars behind him in 3rd, 4th and 5th. It's Steve McMaster and Andrew Parker on the 2nd row of the grid, followed by David Rowe, the championship leader, who has some work to do from the 3rd row. Will hopefully looking to get a quick getaway and pick his way through the first few cars to try and get himself into a position where he can remain in the lead group and, more importantly, in the tow to be able to carry on battling and give himself a good chance for a victory. 6th for Richard Gallagher on the 3rd row alongside David Rowe. Then it's Tom Willis and James Fowler, Academy mates in 2019. And then it'll be Steve Arnell, who's been there or thereabouts in the top 10 the last couple of meetings and the last couple of seasons, and he's still trying to find his feet, just ahead of John Lang alongside him on the 5th row of the grid to round out the top 10. Tom McEwing and Freddie Chiddicks, future and current Academy drivers on the grid. Just Tom McEwing is delaying his entry until next year. Freddie Chiddicks, of course, a competitor in this year's Academy Championship. Then we have Jamie Peters-Ellis, who was on duty for pit lane reporting duties and some of the live stream stuff at Silverstone, Fun Cup and other things. He's back behind the wheel of his sim in 13th on the grid alongside Michael Coomber. Then it's Alan Curtis and Jason Knight, followed by Graham Hopkins and Mike Hilton to round out the 18-car grid that we have, at least for Grid A. And we know there's another grid of drivers that we're kicking off for Grid B very, very shortly, if they haven't already. So, getting set then for 2 races around the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit using the current Wing Complex Grand Prix pit building. So they'll be starting on the straight, exiting the club corners. And of course, the run down towards turn 1 is going to be the very fast right-hander of Abbey, the sweeping corners of Farm, and then back into the complex before they head down the Wellington straight and back into what is the typical, what would have been the last few corners of the lap on the old circuit, by going back towards Copse, and then back around through Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel, down the Hanger Straight, through Stowe, the short little chute, down towards Vale and Club to end the lap. Do you think qualifying's told the whole story yet, Chris? I mean, Christian was 0.3 ahead of everyone else in pace, so is that an omen for the race, or do you think that given that 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th are so close between each other in terms of times, that they might well start to give him a bit more of a run around, given they might get close in the opening laps?
I think we definitely haven't seen the whole story yet. No, they'll also be very keen not to see Christian disappearing off into the distance. While he's not in the lead of the actual points, when you take into account drop scores, his 2 wins keep him out front at the moment. So he is definitely the man, in the pole position and literally, taking it to everyone else. So I think we will see the others giving him a big old fight for his win here.
Christian does like to get his elbows out, but he's also incredibly formidable. Of course, Knockhill certainly proved that. But whether he can pick himself 2 more wins or if someone else is going to challenge, we'll be finding out very shortly. Red lights are about to come on for race number 1 tonight of race number 3, round 3 of the caterhamracer.com season 5 on the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit in the 420Rs, and it's a pretty lightning getaway. Perfect start for Christian Szaruta. 0 wheel spin, dump the clutch, and away he goes. They're going to head down towards turn 1, and he's absolutely rocket propelled. He turns in completely unchallenged through Abbey for the first time, and now towards the complex as they head through as one pack together. It is now Crawford in 2nd place under attack on the outside line from Andy Parker, who goes round the outside into Village, now towards the loop, and then they head through the kink onto the Wellington straight for the first time. Everyone hold your breath. Seems to have getting through trouble-free, giving to the plenty of room as there is on this Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. Hopefully they don't live to regret those. Well, I am regretting those words now because one car's gone very wide on the exit, but thankfully there is no contact. We're down the Wellington straight, under the bridge, and in towards Brooklands for the first time. And Christian Szaruta, Chris, he's absolutely just shot off like a greyhound out of the gates. He's absolutely gone.
He got an absolutely superb start, didn't he? As did David Rowe, in fact. Andrew Parker making really good use of the opening laps, moving from 5th on the grid, and he's now up into 2nd, where we kind of expected. But look at that gap. It's threatening already, and they're going to want to close that one down. McMaster there in 3rd with David Rowe following behind. What a great sight it is to see these 18 cars flowing through the Silverstone turns.
This is very much reminiscent of the days when Sebastian Vettel used to dominate at the front, used to get pole position and then get such an advantage on the opening lap. He was some 2 or 3 seconds ahead by the end of it, and Christian is certainly pulling off a similar move here as he heads up towards Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel. And this is going to be a great static shot. Watch them as they snake and wind their way through the very fast complex of corners, through Maggots, through Beckett's and through Chapel. Little lifts and downshifts as they turn their way through, carrying as much speed as possible and using as much curb as they can get away with. Then they hang it out onto the hangar straight for the first time, where Christian Saruta's advantage at the moment is 1.7 seconds, but it was about 2 a couple of corners ago. So I don't know about you, Chris, on that one, but I think Andy Parker's looking pretty racy here tonight, and I say that rather speculatively because he's managed to pull in a couple of tenths back on Zaruta, and I think if he can get himself a bit more closer and keep his pace up on the opening lap for the next few laps, I think Christian might be in trouble in the next few laps if he's not careful.
Yeah, Andrew has definitely had the pace on the server all week, and he will be there trying not to make any mistakes and trying to bridge that gap. Remember, we say that it's about 0.5 of a second you need to start feeling that toe, and so Christian's done what he needs to do, which is get outside of it. I think that's a perfect analogy, the Sebastian Vettel, because that's exactly as he used to do in the Red Bull, and yeah, it's looking like he could do it, but it's 1.7 seconds. It's really tentative, but I think with maybe a slight mistake from Christian and Andrew, if he keeps nailing it, we'll see them come back together.
The gap was already coming out a little bit more through that fast section. Another tenth taken away, so it's now 1.6. Change for fourth because Guy Crawford has got past Steve McMaster in that move through the complex. They now go almost side by side, and there's a observant Tom Willis there to the right, shot in sixth position, just watching on in his number 81 car. They head out through the kink, now onto the Wellington Straight for the second time. Of course, there might be the DRS boards, but there is no DRS. It's the massive hole that you get punched through the air from these very unaerodynamic Caterhams. That's what makes the racing so good between these cars, both in real life and in the virtual sim. Team Master says, if you don't mind, I'll have that back, Guy, if you don't mind. Thank you. Back into fourth position he goes. And so this is going to be back and forth together. Now, what's interesting also is that not only has Andy Parker lost all the time he gained and a little bit more, the gap is just over 2 seconds, but he's now fallen back into the clutch to David Rowe, who's now tagged on the back of him for what is now currently the battle of second and third. And everyone seems to be pairing off a little bit here in the background. It's almost like tandem drafting in NASCAR. We've got a battle on for second, a pair on for fourth, and for sixth. Also, we've got Tom Willis and Richard Gallagher also getting involved as well. There's all sorts going on here, and everyone seems to be kind of either bunching up or spreading out in their own little pair. Yeah,
it's sort of wheelbarrow racing, isn't it? You can see them all, like you say, pairing off as they kind of obstruct each other and block each other, but the toe kind of keeps them stuck together. All sorts can still happen. We've still got 10 minutes or nearly 11 minutes left in this race, and we've got the second race to follow as well, so they've got to think about that. From a championship perspective, there's no point crashing in the first race, because not only will you start at the back of the second race, you lose all your points that you could potentially do, so they should be keeping that in mind as well.
There's at least 3 abreast you saw there just heading into Stoke Corner. But there it is, just behind the scraps going on for 4th and 5th position. Steve McMaster hangs out around the outside of Richard Gallagher, but so Guy Crawford. Behind them, it is Richard Gallagher having a scrap with both Tom Willis and Tom McEwing. So Tom's dropped back a couple of places behind Gallagher and McEwing, so he's really lost out on this lap. He was 6th, he's now lost 2 spots to 8. Because he might come under threat also from Steve Arnelli in 9th place, and also Jamie Peters-Ennis, who started 13th and already in 2 laps has gone up 3 spots into the top 10. Fastest lap of the race from Christian Zaruta, 2 minutes 24.488. The gap is still 2 seconds at the head of the field as they make their way through Abbey Corner for the 3rd time. This battle pack resumes then to go through Farm Curve. These fantastically fast sweeping corners in this arena section. Richard Gallagher makes the dive up the inside as we go on board, and I could almost kind of see that coming in many cases. It was quite a late lunge. He was resending it up the inside, and I think in many cases Tom McEwing was always going to go for the apex, and probably didn't, Chris, expect him to be diving up the inside that quickly.
No, you could hear the tyre fully locked up on Gallagher's car on the stream, and I think they got away with that contact, didn't they? It was actually, could have ended a lot worse, especially in the sim world. It's the kind of contact that in the sim where you can sometimes have an unnatural reaction to a bit of a contact like that, but it was good to see them both come out of that still facing in the right direction, as we see here the David Rowe, Andrew Parker battle, and David is sat there just sort of hounding Andrew, as we see behind as well McMaster and Gallagher, and Crawford still there in their own pair, but it's definitely the battle behind here, this sort of train of 4 with Arnell there. So we got McEwing, then we got Gallagher. Remember, Gallagher's been making some great move forward this year as far as pace goes, and really is starting to be one of the really good consistent drivers there, with Peters-Ennis doing a really good showing, sort of making up spaces from his qualifying. I think he qualified in about 11th or 12th, so to be in 8th, that's great movement.
I was going to say 13th. I just spotted he was 10th a second ago. Now he's up to 8th position. So this is pretty impressive stuff in Jamie. Of course, moving up 5 spots already. And he's going to try and make him even more positions if he can. leaders make their way out through Chapel and the mix. Just wait to see where we are. So there's Tom McEwing in 6th. 7th place we can see now is Richard Gallagher. Jamie Peter Zennis is there in that grey car just behind the scrap for 6th. There he is. And go on board with Jamie then. He's now watching. He's got quite a grandstand seat here watching these two having a great side-by-side tussle down towards Stowe Corner, right at the end of the hangar straight. It's a fantastic sequence of corners, I think, for me. It's all the way from Copse down towards Stowe Corner. That sequence of corners is one of my favourite in the world because it's such a high-speed cacophony of lefts and rights and fantastically fast apexes and so much grip you can carry, the speed you can carry, particularly in cars like Formula 1 cars and those with plenty of aerodynamic or at least mechanical grip from the tyres. It's a fantastic sequence of corners to go through. Another new fastest lap of the race to confirm that Christian Szaruta is dominating this race so far. There's another 2 minutes 24 and Lowe is the best time by a couple more tenths. I have noticed Jamie Peter Zennis though, he's not hanging around. He really has got himself right back off the tail of these two cars that are still scrapping over 6th and 7th position. If he's not careful, if he gets himself invested too much, he's going up the inside of both of them into the complex. A brilliant lane braking for Jamie Peter Zennis. He's got up the inside of Richard Gallagher. Just about gets it stopped. Up the inside once again goes Tom McEwing. But that, incredibly, was one of the best moves that we just caught the end of, up the inside. 8th to 6th in one move. That was superb.
He's getting a bit of a reputation, isn't he? What an opportunist move there. They were sort of compromising each other on the way into that corner, and Jamie just saw a gap and went for it. Absolutely made it stick and no contact, and what a brilliant move. And like I say, at Knockhill, if you remember, he did the similar thing. He came right back through the field after a slightly less optimal qualifying, but put himself right in the mix when the race. Unfortunately, had some consistency issues sort of later on in the race. So we'll see whether, with still 6 minutes to go, whether he can keep this momentum up.
Trouble is now he hasn't got anyone to get a tow from, of course, and now that leaves him under threat from Tom McEwing, who's now also going to give Richard Gallagher a slipstream down essentially the back straight through to Copse Corner. He does manage to hold on, but he goes wide on the exit, and so then he's going to give McEwing and Gallagher a run. And also look at Tom Willis in the car behind in 9th position. He's going to try and get his elbows out as well, and so Jamie's lost 2 more positions. Back down to 8th he goes. He might lose 9th as well. This is a big gaggle of cars. So they turn their way into Maggott and Beckett. He almost thought about a move up the inside to get past Richard Gallagher, but he had to back out of it as they come up through Chapel once again. Under 6 minutes to go. And now Jamie Peter Zennis, he's now got a double tow in front, but he's also giving a tow to Willis behind. This will be quite interesting. It's Willis that gets the triple tow from the 3 cars in front. Jamie's trying to sneak up the inside and create a gap, which he's just about doing. And Gallagher did manage to see him, thankfully. He's going to hold on to the inside line into Stowe Corner, but Gallagher sweeping around the outside, and there was a little bit of wheel banging there. He gets onto the grass on the inside line, and this is the trouble he's had in the past couple of times. He's incredibly quick, but just gets caught up in 1 or 2 incidents, and that just compromises his race. So he's incredibly fast, there's no doubt about it, and being as high as 6th, then I thought even with the fact that McMaster and Crawford were battling as much as they were, he might have had a chance to start catching up to the guys to get as high as 4th, but just, again, not through any fault of his own, just getting caught up in other drivers trying to get their positions, and it's just bad luck going against him.
Yeah, it's like knowledge of situations and the sort of what are the percentage chances of things going to come off and what isn't going to work, and you have to, that kind of changes and adapts as the race length goes on and as you come down towards the end of time. So yeah, he, like I say, he's dropped now back down into 8th, but you can see how hungry and the angry mob is behind to go and get those places back that he's been taking. And also that helicopter shot I thought gave a great illustration of the kind of twos and fros that, you know, how the cars use speed in different ways. Some people in the middle of the corner are able to make a run, but then the others are sort of able to take it out the corners. In the background, I think we see Freddie Chiddick as he's spun coming out of Aintree onto the Wellington straight there, but so that's not ideal for his lap. We saw him certainly doing a great job at Knockhill, but maybe Silverstone, he'll hope it doesn't happen like this.
Yeah, well, they certainly have less power underneath. I mean, they have roughly about 60 horsepower less than he has currently in his academy car, which is going to be quite crucial. So, but even so, a bit of a tough start to the proceedings for him in his first race, back down towards the back of the field. Here's the battle going on for second place. Andy Parker showing incredible consistency here to keep David Rowe at bay. And I suspect David Rowe, whilst of course he might still be happy with the podium, he might be slightly frustrated that Andy is as quick as him, even though he gets a bit of a tow here. So this just shows how quickly Andy Parker is, and also how quickly he's come on and continues to improve thanks to the tuition from Darren Burke that he gets. And there, in fact, is Christian Szaruta. So I think what's also fairly impressive enough is that these two now have managed to settle into a rhythm where, yes, they're just as fast as each other, but they all seem to be still just as fast as Christian. So we're not exactly losing too much time, if any. They're keeping the gap stable, but it's that time they lost early on that's compromising them. And as now David Rowe looks up the inside, he might not take his turn in the last 3 minutes to lead the pack, which he does. He slips up the inside into Stowe corner, and possibly that might have been Andy Parker saying, well, look, if we're going to try and catch him, maybe if I follow you, let's see if we can work together. Well, the fact that Andy Parker's trying to get it around the outside here into Vale and then Club suggests maybe not Chris. They're still having their own little battle whilst Christian starts laughing to himself. Still now 3.3 seconds up the road and still leading as they go on to what will be the second to last lap.
That was almost certainly David Rowe saying, right, we're getting towards the end of this race and I am now starting to make my move for what will be second place unless Christian makes any mistakes. So he was definitely, throwing the hammer down, saying, right, it's my turn to lead and I'm going to try and break away from you before the end of this race. But certainly doesn't look like that's going to happen. So he's shown one of his cards. He did a gentle dummy at the end of the hanger straight and Andrew let him go. And now we will see whether Andrew can follow him home. Andrew doing very well in the standings, so he is 5th in the championship so far. And when you take into account some of the drop scores, he's doing just as well as David. But yeah, going to be interesting to see in these last couple of minutes who is going to win this battle.
What I thought was interesting is that even with the pass that he made, of course, the advantage of the toe that he got down the straight meant that actually Christian's David Rowe was actually a fraction faster than Christian Szaruta on that last lap. It was a 2:24.9 for Szaruta, whereas Rowe put in a 2:24.8. As for comparison, Andy Parker's car was a 2:25 lap time. Now, JP Zenith is back to 9th. Now, I did wonder for a second, of course. He wasn't really catching the cars back again in 6th and 7th place, and I feared that because he was under attack from Steve Varnell on the cars behind, that he would actually have to try and find himself a tow partner to try and catch up to the cars in front. Now he's got it in Steve Varnell, with John Lang also matching off the back at the tail end of the top 10. I wonder if we're going to the last lap and a half here, Chris, there's any chance of him catching back up to these cars in front of Woodwiss and Niall, because they are, McEwing and Woodwiss, because they are running nose to tail, but it depends on if they're actually battling or actually seem to be working together. And it looks to me, Chris, even though they were fighting earlier on, I think they've got a temporary truce here to the end of the race to try and make sure they can ensure themselves finishing 6th and 7th and get as many points as possible.
Even if they had a truce, John Lang's just gone and stuck his oar in, and we've got Fowler there coming up quickly behind. So yeah, no, nothing of the sort. With only a minute to go now, they are absolutely fighting for every position. I saw a bit more contact there with Peter Ennis hitting back of Steve Arnell, so he needs to be a bit cautious of that. He's not going to make too many friends if he keeps making that contact, but you can see how close the battles have remained all the way through this race, and just if they can only keep Christian in sight, they could also keep that battle alive at the front of the race as well.
So we're on to the final lap of the race then. 25 seconds to go on the clock as Christian Szaruta continues to lead the way. And again, that last lap, you can see that both cars behind, only fractionally, but they were just about quicker, but roughly, if not a couple of hundredths quicker. Effectively, they were on the same pace as the leader, so even with battling, they're still pretty even. I think they've realised they're not going to get the win, so they're going to go at it for second place. And Andy Parker goes back up the inside into Village. Now looks to try and get through once again at the loop. Looks for the undercut here. He knows that David Rowe's going to run wide here, so Andy Parker looks for the switchback. I wonder if Darren Burke's taught him that one, but even then, David Rowe's got the line covered as they come out through the little kink onto the Wellington Straight now for the final time, and doubts to the outside line now. Is Andy Parker going to be brave enough to go last of the late breakers and sweep around the outside and trust David Rowe to hold on? Well, David Rowe goes a little bit later on the inside, but again, you see Andy Parker just trying to set him up for the better run off the corner. And this might be a crucial one here. They come up through Luffield. Gap has gone back out again, even still, whilst these two battle for 3.8 seconds. And there is Christian Szaruta. You just saw the back of shot still going there. In fact, he's not even in the shot as they come through Woodcote. So that's how far ahead he is already. Down towards Copse they go then for the final time. And Rowe's weaving this way and that. Well, not weaving, he's trying to break the toe as much as he can towards Copse. Through the right-hander, incredibly fast corner. And now this beautiful section, the sequence of turns up through Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel onto the hanger straight. This is the view from Andy Parker on board. Staring at the back of the DPR Motorsport boss. Going through the right of Maggots, now through Beckett's, now Chapel, and I wonder the hanger straight's possibly going to be the last chance they've got to keep the position. Rowe will have to get his elbows out because he knows he's potentially a sitting duck here. Andy Parker in the slipstream. Which way is he going to go? To the outside line. Now, you can pass on the outside at Stowe. It is possible, but he'll need his nose just about in front to try and allow David Rowe to give him the space here. Down towards the right hand at the end of the straight. And it might look for the cut back, and Parker's thinking about the outside line. If he's able to stay there, he might well have the inside run for the next corner. Side by side, he'll be on the outside for the run into Vale. And it is going to be the duel for second place. Last of the late breakers into the left-hander, but Rowe seems to have it covered just about. And I think that's how they're going to stay. But meanwhile, this man, what else can you say? But again, utterly dominant from start to finish. And it's going to be Christian Szaruta with his third win in a row in Season 5 of caterhamracer.com. The duel to the end for second place is won by David Rowe, who picks up P2 ahead of Andy Parker. And then we wait for fourth and fifth backwards. Across the line they come. It's Guy Crawford who beats Steve McMaster. But it's sliding their way out to the last turn. It's going to be Tom McEwing, Tom Woodwiss and John Lang, followed by Steve Barnell. Then Jamie Peters-Ennis, who will just hold on to 10th place ahead of James Fowler. He was as high as 6th. It could have been more, but will certainly take some confidence. Well, that was side by side for 11th between, I think that was James Fowler and Jason Knight. Fowler getting ahead of Knight on the line. Richard Gallagher was also back in 13th place. Then it was Alan Curtis, Mike Coomber, Graham Hopkins, and Freddie Chiddicks, of course, who had that spin late in the race ahead of Mike Hilton. So, a very entertaining first race, as always, for caterhamracer.com to kick off tonight's action. And here's the confirmation of the results. So Christian Szaruta then picks up the victory in what else can you say other than pretty dominant fashion. He obviously backed off towards the end because the gap was certainly 1.4 seconds, not 2.2 in the end, so that doesn't tell the whole story. But Szaruta wins. It's David Rowe who wins the battle for second place after he passed Andy Parker late on. Parker again showing some form now and some better luck, he says rather tentatively, in third place. Guy Crawford fourth for Steve McMaster, rounding out the top five. And it's Tom McEwing and Tom Willis who had that great battle towards the end for sixth position. Eighth for John Lang, ninth for Steve Arnell, and 10th for Jamie Peters-Ennis, who started 13th, remember, and was as high as sixth at one point. So certainly making some brilliant moves and certainly impressing many people here within the caterhamracer.com paddock. Great effort by James to get as high as sixth as he did. 11th place for James Fowler, 12th for Jason Knight, 13th for Richard Gallagher, but he was the one that was side by side with Jason Knight at the line. And it's Alan Curtis, Michael Coomber, Graham Hopkins, Freddie Chiddicks, and Mike Hilton. Well, there's not many more superlatives you can use really to describe the performance of Christian Szaruta, because you probably used them up already from Knockhill and from races past. It was simply just he essentially got the job done on lap one. He got that incredibly, almost perfect start. Got away to lead by about 2 seconds at the end of that first lap and just genuinely never looked back.
Yeah, it was an absolute rocket ship of a start. I think he absolutely hooked it up. And I thought a couple of other drivers had also hooked it up as well, but they just, because he could take that first corner, just on his own line, there was nowhere for them to come back at him. And he just put the ultimate consistent performance, didn't he? He didn't put a foot wrong, and off he went into the distance. Great battle between David Rowe and Andrew Parker, though, so that kept our interest, and certainly the rest of the field were having a whale of a time.
So what it now means is that, of course, you have to see the prospect of how this is going to play out for the second race coming up now. Just a reminder, the grid is set by the results of race one, so wherever you finish is where you'll start for the second race, which means, of course, that Christian Szaruta, by virtue of winning that first race, will start again on pole position. But I think crucially on this one, Chris, David Rowe, thanks to his second place, will start on the front row alongside him. And the fact that he hasn't got to pick his way through a couple more cars in front of him to get to that second place, at least to get to that battle for second, means that if he can hook up the good start and even get a better one that's, if it's even possible, than Christian, and to keep with him in the opening laps, Christian might not be allowed an easy run like he did in race one. It was probably definitely not as easy as it looked, probably. I'm sure Christian will say that. But even so, David, I know, will be determined to get a really, really good start and stick with Christian in the opening laps so that he can go with him and run through it forwards. Because we saw towards the end of that race, Chris, they both had, including also Andy Parker, all three were running exactly the same pace. So David knows at least he can take comfort in race form. He is just as quick as, if not a fraction quicker than Christian. And that can be key if you can stay with him in the opening laps by starting on the front row of the grid. And
not only that, Scott, we've got Guy Crawford, Steve McMaster, they all managed to keep up. Although they had a gap that they couldn't re-bridge they were all pretty much, following each other for equal. So if those gaps don't open up this time, this lead battle could be 6 deep. And Tom Willis coming through there from quite a lower qualifying, but he's ended the race there, I think, in sort of 5th or 6th place. So that's a good performance. But yeah, I'm quite hopeful that this, depending on this start again, we'll see how well Christian gets off the line, I guess.
I think, to be fair, another driver we have to watch out for, I think, genuinely, is Jamie Peters-Ennis. The fact he got as high as 6th, he now starts 10th on the grid, 3 spots higher, and it only took him about a couple of laps to get himself into 8th. So certainly starting from a little bit further forward than he was means he'll certainly be one to watch out for to see if he can make even better early progress in this second race.
He had an issue with Richard Gallagher a bit earlier in the race, didn't he? And we saw Gallagher fall back now down, starting in 13th there on the grid. So, and we know he's got pace because he was running up in 5th when he had that issue with Peters-Ennis. And yep, so he'll be looking certainly to make progress from 13th, and we'll keep an eye on him through this race.
Certainly will. Just awaiting my lights for race 2 of tonight. It's the 3rd evening of racing for caterhamracer.com season 5. And Christian Szaruta will be looking for a 4th win in a row and of the season. David Rowe, of course, already has one to his name. Can he make it a second? The other one, of course, went to Roy Rossetti, who's not here tonight. Will it be somebody else who picks up the victory? Well, let's find out. The next 15 minutes will tell all as the red lights come on one by one here for Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. Race number 2 of Caterham Racers' 3rd meeting of the season 5 underway, and again, incredibly, it's 0 wheel spin for Christian Szaruta as he gets off the line. It was also a fairly strong start, to be fair, from David Rowe, and he has gone with him into Abbey Corner. That's crucial. So both him and Parker have kept with him at the start. They hasn't been allowed to get away too much, but Parker and Rowe are already battling down towards the complex for the first time. He's almost practically 3 abreast. Here goes David Rowe, already up the inside. He's not wasting any time at all into the village complex for the first time. David Rowe gets his nose in front and leads, heading out of the complex onto the Wellington Straight for the first time. Rowe leads. It's Szaruta in 2nd place, and what's happening back behind them?
That was a statement of intent, wasn't it? He absolutely wasn't going to let Christian do the same thing again. He just put his car, slammed it down the inside in the village and loop, and absolutely came away with it. So now Andrew Parker is hounding the back of Christian's car there into Brooklands, looking to see whether he can also put him behind and put him on the back foot.
And this is interesting. Look at this. It's now David Rowe's taking the one of leading from the front, but Christian Szaruta effectively is trapped when the car's behind him. Of course, David Rowe got that great start. He's now starting to pull away by 3/4 of a second. And Christian Szaruta now he can't escape from the cars behind. He has Andy Parker and also a fast-starting Tom McEwing and Steve McMaster right behind him. We now have a lead group as David Rowe knows exactly what's coming. He goes right to the pit wall to try and break the toe from Szaruta and co down towards Copse for the first time. But that was incredible stuff. And we said that it was crucial that David Rowe got on with it early on, and he absolutely has. He listened to us, or had it in the game plan all along. Either way, he had to come for 2nd place, and Christian Szaruta is down to 3rd almost. Whoa, side by side into the complex of Maggots and Beckett. You don't normally do that, but incredibly Andy Parker gets his elbows out and really shows what he's made of for 2nd place, and the race 1 winner. He's not in trouble, but he's certainly putting himself right in the pack here, now under big pressure from Tom McEwing and Steve McMaster. I think one thing for certain, Chris, he is not having the second race his own way as he did earlier on.
No, all the rest of them have had race-long battles. They are race-hardened, ready for the battle. Christian had a really easy run of it, so he's now got to switch his gear from that ultra-consistent to being that ultra-tactical instead. I'm sure it'll come good, and he's just at the moment, he's just in that process of being shuffled down the order by want of just being outside of the line. Andrew Parker going back down the inside of him there into the oh crikey, it's tight, isn't it? But he's still got the inside, so he looks like he'd probably come out on top of this little mini battle.
And also, look, he's joining them too in 6th position. Tom Willis in P6 in the grey car with the black roll bar. As Andy Parker sticks it out around the outside. It is now 2x2. This is only the end of lap 1. We've only just started the race. It is almost 4 abreast down towards Abbey Corner. Who comes out on top of all of it? Oh, but it's not going to be Andy Parker. He's got exit stage right onto the runoff area. He will start to come back on the road. And it's typical Andy Parker luck, isn't it? He gets himself into a great position, and then it all goes wrong, which is absolutely I'm really unfortunate for him. Christian Szaruta, out of all of that, has managed to somehow stay in 2nd place, ahead of Tom McEwing, who quite a lightning getaway from what was the outside of the 3rd row, the 2nd row of the grid, to get up into 3rd place as quick as he did. Tom Willis is up to 4th, And Guy Crawford also making his way through it as he took advantage of Steve McMaster getting held up. He is now into 6th position. And look who's at it again in 7th, Jamie Peters-Ennis. He started 10th, up 3 spots, and the leaders in this top 5 group are not far out of his grasp, provided he can get away from battling both Steve Varnell and James Fowler. It's only a lap and a half, and I'm almost out of breath.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, take a breath, Scott. It's all frantic though, isn't it? Look at this front pack, and straight behind them, all this gaggle of cars, all very, very hungry to move forward. Yeah, but Andrew Parker got absolutely fired out that first corner. 4 wide going in was never going to be a comfortable situation. I think McMaster just snatched a break maybe, and it just, he had a car on his inside as well. I imagine it looked like a racing incident from where I was sat from that one, but it was an unfortunate Andrew Parker who got fired to the outside. But we are seeing a role reversal. David Rowe has got that comfortable gap, but we are seeing Szaruta sort of in that middle ground. So does David Rowe have the ultimate pace to protect that lead for the next 11 minutes? That's not going to be a comfortable place for him to be, is it? And we see there McEwing and Willis hard at work. So Willis has made a great run through the whole field. Hasn't had as much practice as some of the other drivers around him, and he's certainly made good in that first race and now up into 4th place.
The key thing is that Christian Szaruta has broken out of that magic half a second gap he needs to ensure that Tom McEwing doesn't get a tow. There was contact, someone off in the background, I think. There was smoke off in the background, somebody off the road, I think. James Fowler's going tumbling down the timing screen, so I think it's him that was involved. It must have been some contact down the back straight somewhere, but either whatever happened, it someone went onto the grass or went spinning somewhere. It looks that James is the casualty out of all of that, sadly. So he's back in 16th behind Graham Hopkins and just ahead of Mike Hilton. David Rowe with the fastest lap of the race, giving Christian Szaruta a bit of a taste of his own medicine from the first race. If you now go on board with Tom Willis, having a bit of a better run in this second race than he was in the early stages of race 1. He could be in contention for a podium here as he turns his way up through Farm Curve into the village complex now for the 3rd time. Already a third of the way through this race. He thumps the curb on the inside. Richard Gallagher, so Guy Crawford in 5th position. Steve McMaster 6th, and John Lang's hit trouble. He's going down the timing screen as well. He's down to 14th place after an issue, whether it's contact or a spin. Up onto the Wellington straight they go for the 3rd time. Now this is Tom Willis's chance to get in the slipstream here. And if Guy Crawford can take advantage, he's only 3/10 away from getting a tow from these 2 cars in front. So it may well be possibility to make it a 3-car scrap for the best of the rest outside the podium as they turn into the left-hander at Brooklands and into this long right-hander at Luffield. And what's intriguing is Christian Szaruta has brought the gap down ever so slightly, but it's still hovering over 2 seconds. So we're getting a bit of a stalemate here, just like we saw in race 1, but it's role reversal. It's now David Rowe who has the advantage. Christian Szaruta is doing the chasing, but isn't really making as much inroads as he wants to. And of course, he knows being a long lap, he hasn't got many laps to try and close that gap back in. He needs to make the most of every single lap he drives, every single corner he drives, to try and bring that gap down. He has got it just under 2 seconds now, so he's getting on with it at this point. But he has to keep on making his progress and keep on taking several tenths out per lap and every few corners, every sector, in order to try and stand any chance of reeling David Rowe into stand a chance of trying and getting a second win by the time we get to the end of the race in a few minutes' time.
Yeah, and if Christian's waiting for him to miss a gear, well, we've got a sequential box tonight, so unlikely that's going to happen at this point. But Guy Crawford is now very firmly entrenched in this battle for the podium. Tom Willis is one of the, hasn't had a podium in our events this year. Everyone ahead of him does, but we see Tom McEwing becoming a sandwich with Tom Willis on the outside and Guy Crawford on the other one. There's 3 wide going to Stowe. Can do that round Stowe, actually, and you saw Guy there was able to make a move back, but I think there has been contact. There has, and Guy contacted Tom McEwing on the exit.
So off the road then Guy Crawford and Tom McEwing. That's their races sadly compromised. It puts Steve McMaster up to 4 and Jamie Peters-Ennis up to P5. So keeps up this rate, he might well put himself in contention for a rather impressive P5. And he's got a gap of 2 seconds to the cars behind. He's got likewise in front of him though, but that's benefiting him. And it really is a case of, in some drivers, if you keep your nose clean in many cases, particularly when it is quite frantic in these races at caterhamracer.com, you will even surprise yourself with how much ground and how many positions you can make up just by keeping out of trouble. It really is phenomenal with some drivers who just simply, all right, in a nice way, they're don't have the ultimate pace, but just simply keeping the car on the road, keeping out of battles, and picking their battles carefully, and actually keeping their car on the road at all times as much as they can. That's where they can pick up some pretty surprising results. And kudos to Jamie, not just on that, but also on fairly decent pure pace alone, up in the top 5, he's been one of the stars of the racing tonight.
Yeah, and we're also watching another man on screen here, Richard Gallagher. Remember I said he'd been pushed down to 13th or 14th in that last race, and he's already made his way up to 7th, so you can see he's benefited from those early laps. So you see, oh, that was Jason Knight. They're locking up fully inside of Andrew Parker.
Now, what's interesting, Christian Szaruta, that gap is down to just a fraction over a second. So Christian Szaruta, then in clear air, appears to be getting on with this much better than David Rowe did. Of course, the difference between this and race 1 is David Rowe eventually spent most of that steering at the back of Andy Parker's car. So that's the main difference on that side. Whereas Christian Szaruta can use all the clean track to keep pressing on. So I don't think David Rowe's got this one sewn up too much. In fact, he's got the gap to under a second now, so that's going to be critical. Tom Willis now is, I'd like to say it in an unchallenged 3rd place, but it's not, because you can see Steve McMaster there in the duck-egg blue and red machine in 4th position in the mix. Then Jamie Peters-Ennis, who's 3 seconds back in 6th, and he's being reeled in steadily by the chasing pack headed by Steve Arnell. Then you have Richard Gallagher, Mike Coomber, Jason Knight and Andy Parker, who's recovering after his spin. In fact, he might still get a top 5 at this rate if he plays his cards right. He's in P10. There he is in the grey Caterham on the outside there of Jason Knight as they come down the back straight towards Stowe Corner once again with 5.5 minutes to go. So on the comeback trail is Andy Parker. I don't know how far he'll get up the order. He's going up the inside of Jason Knight to take Knight's position, which he does. And James Fowler running in 11th place just behind them. So a couple of drivers hit strife in those last couple of moves, trying to make ground up, particularly Guy Crawford, who's all the way back in 17th. But lots of scraps going on in the midfield. As we predicted in qualifying, it's very fast and frantic for those hovering in and around the bottom of the top 10.
Yeah, we hardly saw any of these cars in the first race. We were concentrating on that kind of second battle, but you can see that it's equally as tight here. Jason Knight doing a great performance up in 10th here now, so he's definitely as high as he's been in these races so far. And we can see that as other drivers have had those issues, so McEwing and John Lang, they're all back there fighting with Alan Curtis and co sort of in this rear battle, but you can see how close it's still remaining even this late into the race.
Under 5 minutes to go then. Andy Parker holding on now. Speaking of close, it's about to get pretty close between David Rowe and Christian Szaruta. He's arguably, although Tom McEwing, all right, is in 2nd place in points coming this weekend, but these arguably, I guess, are the 2 main championship contenders. Of course, Tom, okay, no disrespect to him, of course, because he's had some problems here. Is a questionable corner cussing there for Christian Szaruta, using all the track and a bit more. Christian Szaruta just frantically making notes there on that as he for his debrief later on. Up through the right hand of, oh, they go. Christian, though, of course, again, as I just mentioned, this is the difference between race 1 and race 2. David Rowe, for the most part, didn't have clear air. Christian Szaruta has. He's made the most of it pretty much and shown that in clear air, ultimately, he does appear to be that much quicker. But David, of course, has enough of a gap at the moment, so he's not being reeled in too much where he isn't being under threat from the half a second toe, which drivers get, of course, in this sim. So he's got to try and keep on pushing, but he knows that Christian at the moment is coming, and he's coming pretty quickly, so he's got to try and get on with it now with 3 3/4 minutes to go. But you just do get a sense that David Ray is going to come under attack any moment now. One small slip and it'll be Christian Szarute's chance to pounce and take 2 from 2.
I said at the beginning it was that gap big enough, so Tom Willis has to abandon the track, gets on back through the safety, and maybe McMaster will benefit from that. But yeah, I said at the beginning, did David Rowe have a big enough gap to protect it for 11 minutes? And it looks at the moment like he might have only had 10 minutes worth of gap, doesn't it?
Yep, 3/4 of a second now, and it's continuing to get closer. Speaking of close, this is looking pretty tasty between Steve McMaster and Tom Willis. And Tom had to kind of take a second bite of the apex there because he realised Steve McMaster came across him, had to very much just blip the brakes a bit to make sure there wasn't any contact. And now as they turn into Vale and Club, McMaster thinks, right, rather than try and stick my nose back down the inside again and risk any contact, let's just sit back and try and get him further around the lap with about roughly 2 laps to go as they come across the line. So lap time-wise, Christian Szaruta was a full half a second quicker. So that proves he does have the ultimate pace. And he is now, you can see on the gap, he is pretty much at that magical half-second margin. Up through Farm Curve and into the village. This is now Zaruta's chance. He hasn't really had to get into a fight too much all day. Now he has. He's going to up the back of David Rowe. David, of course, has been staring at the back of Andy Parker's cage for most of race 1 before he passed him. It was only in the late stage where he had to get his elbows out and start fighting to get that second place. Now, however, Chris, the boots on the other foot. Rather than being the pursuer, he's now the pursued and having to try and defend here rather than attacking the closing stages and try and get a position up where he's already leading.
Yeah, keep an eye on that little time ticker on the top left of your screen now. Christian Szaruta now only 2/10 behind, so the toe was worth 0.2 of a second down that without any effort from his part. And I think in the next couple of straights, we'll see that gap absolutely disappear. David Rowe doing a good job at the moment to look like he's not giving up easily, not rolling over, that's for sure. But it's certainly the Jaws music will be playing in his earphones right now.
I think it's in terms of sharks, I think Christian Szaruta certainly smells blood in the water here. He senses the opportunity and has a little speculative look down the outside. The first bit of pressure David Rowe has been under all race. He's trying to force him a bit distracted there. He almost pump drafts him on the run down towards Maggots and Beckett, and now they're going to go side by side up towards the complex. As Christian Szaruta gets his nose almost just about in front, is David Rowe going to have to yield? No, he doesn't. He goes round the outside. Szaruta takes to the curve through Maggots. They're going to be side by side again, and David Rowe keeps in front, but he knows that Zaruta's putting him under massive pressure. And right through Beckett's and Chapel onto the hanger straight now for the second to last time. They head on to the final lap next time by. He knows that Zaruta's putting him under the biggest pressure he's had all race, side by side for the two championship contenders, wheel to wheel down towards Stowe Corner, with now just 7 seconds left to go. Christian Szaruta will look down the outside if David Rowe can get him back on the inside into the right hand, and they turn in. He does fire it back up the inside line. Szaruta hands it out onto the left-hand side and sweeps back behind as Rowe gets back in front. This is going to be quite the contest onto the last lap, Chris. The two titans of this championship, David Rowe and Christian Szaruta, going at it. Hammer and tongs up the inside. There's a bit of bump and there's contact. Christian Szaruta realises, my bad, didn't mean that. Lets him go once again. With a lap to go, this is going to be quite a fierce battle between the two DPR teammates.
Absolutely stellar battling. Well, I don't think I've ever seen anyone go side by side through the whole of Beckett's and come out on the side, and they seem to be every single corner right now. They want to do that side by side. Christian absolutely did the right thing as he's now back up the inside, but he's got the outside for the farm curve. Can he make it up to stick up the inside? He has. I think he has finally got that move. David still coming back at him round the outside of the loop. What absolutely brilliant driving this is. Absolute hammer and tong going for it, and David Rowe's got the inside for the loop going out onto Aintree and then down the back straight.
That was a superb pair of moves. The brilliant little dummy there from Szaruta to get the cut back on the exit of Abbey, and then for David Rowe to come back at him down the outside to get the inside line from the next corner into the loop. Fantastic scrap between the top two, and I really hope, fingers crossed, it doesn't end in tears here. Side by side again, wheel to wheel into Brooklands they go once more as Rowe just about holds on, but Szaruta is going to really try and set him up here because he knows his last main chance is probably going to be down the hanger straight into Stowe. If he doesn't get him there, the last chance might well be at Vale through Club, but now out of Copse and Luffield now through Woodcote for the final time, past the Heritage pitch and down towards Copse. This is with the crucial part here. If Rowe can stay in front, it might be crucial. It might possibly give himself a chance to try and defend down towards Stowe Corner. But Szaruta might want to try and go around the outside into Copse Corner, which is pretty daring in itself. Side by side, tries to get the switch back again. And are they going to go wheel to wheel and side by side, parallel into the complex of Maggots and Beckett? Szaruta's thinking about it. He goes down the outside again, but still no movement as they come up through Maggots, up through Beckett. They are literally nose to tail. Szaruta has his nose shoved under the roll cage of David Rowe, saying, come on, get on with it. Oh, there's contact. Round goes Szaruta. And David Rowe carries on. Szaruta, that's his chance to victory gone. And Steve McMaster goes through to second place. Tom Willis will go through to third. And it was always going to, we were fearing it was going to end in tears. It just about had, but it does for Christian Szaruta. All that hard work after he got towards the back of him. Some brilliant battling wheel to wheel. It's a shame that scrap's ended as it has. And it looks as though the positions are going to be static. Look also, they're pretty settled behind. But that's agonising for Christian Szaruta. He will kick himself for that one. And David Rowe, who's, as far as I can see, held his line, but I'll let Chris work up that one afterwards in the steward's room. But either way, a brilliant duel towards the end between the two DPR teammates. It looked as though Szaruta was going to get in there and try and make the move. There was a bit of contact in the end, but it's going to be one apiece for the main contenders. Up towards the checkered flag, David Rowe brilliantly holds on in the second race and wins surely the best race of the season so far. David Rowe weaves in delight to win race 2 here at Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. It's Steve McMaster in second place, and Tom Willis finally gets a podium. All right. Forget if he inherited it or not, it's still third place for Tom Willis in a brilliant drive. His best drive so far, but one of the best I've seen from caterhamracer.com. Christian Szaruta will agonise over that. He was that close to making it 2 from 2. He still has a win from tonight, but he'll have been kicking himself not to get the double. It's still fourth. It's still strong points towards the championship heading towards next time. Jamie Peters Ennis, I take my hat off to, my hypothetical hat off to him. up to 5th in the end, and he held on to that for the rest of the race after the shenanigans for cars around him in the early stages. 6th for Steve Arnell, 7th for Richard Gallagher, then Parker, Coomber, and I think it was Jason Knight rounding out the top 10. Goodness me, what a brilliant race. One of the best we've had, I think, ever in the caterhamracer.com, at least for season 5. Magnificent stuff from all involved. David Rowe, then, that's the great escape for him. Just about got away with that after the contact, and he wins by 0.6 of a second from Steve McMaster in 2nd place. And you can see the reaction to that from both Christian and from David in the chat below. You will let you see that for yourself. Steve McMaster 2nd, 3rd place for Tom Willis. Christian Szaruta could have been a double win, ends up with 4th, but it's still very strong points. Although, if it comes down to those last couple of points at the end, maybe he'll look back at that and think that was the critical moment where the championship, potentially still on the hunt, was either won or lost. Who knows, but we'll wait and see. 5th for Jamie Peters-Ennis. Brilliant stuff for Jamie to start 13th, then to finish, 9th or 10th in the end, and then pick his way through to get a fairly unchallenged 5th towards that, because he managed to keep the rest of the field at bay going for the rest of the race. 6th goes to Steve Arnell. Nice steady result for him. Ahead of a recovery from Richard Gallagher, who picks up in 7th. Andy Parker recovered back to 8th after his incident in the first couple of laps at Abbey Corner. 9th for Michael Coomber. He was a bit an unknown for him. A bit of a quiet race. He managed to pick up P9. And then it's James Fowler who rounds up the top 10. And it's followed by Jason Knight, Tom McEwing, who will be agonising over, or another one to be agonising over what a possible lost result. He was very strong tonight at many points. John Lang 13th after his spin. Alan Curtis 14th. Guy Crawford again, another one. Fell foul of some incidents, but he has to finish in 15th place ahead of Freddie Chiddicks, Graham Hopkins, and Mike Hilton. Chris, how do you sum that one up? That was sensational.
It was absolutely brilliant, wasn't it? I mean, that battle right at the end of that race just shows what's possible in the online world and around Silverstone in the Caterhams, and I'm sure in the real world we'll be seeing some great battles like that as well. And whilst it did end in contact, I think overall the two of them managed the whole situation incredibly well. They rolled the dice maybe once or twice too many times in the end, and Christian did end up suffering because of it. It's hard to say, immediately afterwards, if there was any fault or any blame, but ultimately it was two people wanting that win and really going for it, and David Rowe took it and yeah, in a great thing. So definitely better to have had that battle, and lost out in the end than not have had it at all.
Yeah, magnificent stuff from all of them involved. And again, regardless of that result, I think they can be happy with the fact that the battling was as strong as it was. So it's a winning piece, of course, for Christian Szaruta and David Rowe. Of course, Tom McEwing has been very consistent and had some good results all the way through the first couple of rounds. Didn't quite get the results I'm sure he was after tonight, and so I'm sure that might have dropped him out of 2nd place, which means it will be Rowe versus Szaruta, I'm sure, at the head of the points table, having taken at least a win each. And it was just winning a 2nd for Rowe, winning a 4th for Christian Szaruta. And Steve McMaster would have made up some positions, as will have Andrew Parker. Richard Gallagher will have moved up in the points too as well, because of the likes of Blair McConaughey and Will Rossetti not here tonight, so they will have dropped down the table from where they were in 7th and 8th respectively. And this, again, do we speculate possibly, if it does come down to David Rowe and Christian Szaruta, if it does come down to just a couple of points, could that last lap in those last few corners maybe be looked back on as one of the deciding factors in the title battle, if it comes down to a one-on-one showdown between David Rowe and Christian Szaruta? Because given the fine margins of points that are available, and only a couple of points in between, in terms of if it's 3 or 4 points, you can't help but think, maybe looking back to this race, if that incident hadn't happened, it might be a different complexion when it comes to the championship finale.
Yeah, and it goes both ways. David lost out that win last time out, didn't he, by just missing a gear? So you're right, that couple more places lost there might be crucial by the end of the year. There's still a long way to go. We're only at the 3rd round at the moment. There's still 4 more to go, so not even at the halfway point. So regardless of how far ahead or behind you are right now, all the same is going to happen again. So you certainly can't count anything, and you just want to go race by race, but you're definitely happy if you've got a race win under the bag, and especially when one of your main competitors then has lost out a couple of points. So yeah, really, really good, and yeah, maybe crucial, but only time will tell.
Well, I reckon this is going to be probably about the most interesting and entertaining post-race interviews that we're going to have, I think. So, and I think we probably know who the two of the main targets we're going to have a chat to, I think, if you're going to drag them in. So I think it's time for you to go and brave the interview room and bring in, I'm sure, a few of our drivers in that race, because I'm sure that a few of them have got quite a bit to say about that race for different reasons.
I'll try and get each of the podiums in. We'll start with Tom Willis, who got that podium in the second race there. Tom, you got us?
Yeah, I got you, Chris.
Yeah, so it's good to see you back online and racing. Missed you at the weekend, but what a great second race.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I mean, I was kind of gifted the podium by Christian, who I've heard in the other room just went straight into Dave. But no, I don't mind too much. I think it's my first podium on caterhamracer.com, so I'm pretty chuffed.
Yeah, and it was really well managed, like, you know, keeping your nose clean, but also keeping ahead of McMaster for most of the race, but just losing out to at the end. I guess you thought at that point the podium was gone until that last lap.
Yeah, I made a little mistake going into the final chicane complex, and then he was gone. He broke the toe. He would have probably gone anyway. But I was pretty chuffed to be able to keep up with him, to be honest, for a bit, because I was nowhere in practice, and then it just sort of all came together in the races. So found a bit of speed.
I mean, first virtual pot. Congratulations! And are we going to see you at Silverstone for real?
Yes, I'm there. Can't wait. Obviously, as you say, missed Knock Hill. But yeah, can't wait for Silverstone.
Brilliant.
This is a good starter for it. So thanks for organising it.
No worries. We'll speak to you then.
Cheers.
Great, and I will drag in Andrew Parker as well. Andrew, have you got us in the commentary box?
Good evening.
Hello. So I guess we won't talk too much about the second race, or maybe we will in a minute. But it was the opening race. You did get that podium, and you had a really, really good race with David Rowe to get there.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I think I had a toss of the coin going into the last bend of the last lap, and just backed off enough. And I think if I'd have kept my foot out of it, because David run wide, I'd have had a better run on the tarmac. I might have pinched him by a hair's breadth.
And even round turn one, you just lost the rear end as you were trying to do the cutback round the sort of second, into the loop, and it just looked like you might have had a run at him. But yeah, a bit of an unfortunate sort of. Well, I say it's a four wide moment going into Abbey, and your car was the one that sort of pinged off.
Yeah, there was. It looks like Steve Mack was on the inside, and so maybe Tom Willis was between me and him. And I think Steve went in a bit hot, understeered into Tom, who hit me just as I was correcting the slide. So I was already turning left as I got contact from the right, so my car just went left very quickly.
Yeah, we caught that on the stream, so you can watch that back. It did look,
Excellent.
4 into 1 didn't go, but congratulations on the podium. That you can probably count that second race as one who dropped scores and move on.
Lovely job, cheers guys.
Speak to you soon.
Thanks, bye.
Alrighty, so let's get in Steve McMaster, who had... Steve, have you got us in the commentary box? No. Hello, Steve. Have you got us?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. Great. And what a second race there. I was just speaking to Tom, and it kind of looked like you were on for a third, but suddenly that converted into a second on the last lap.
Yes. Congratulations, firstly, to Tom. I think it's his first podium, so that's fantastic. Yeah, coming up to where was that? Like Beckett's complex, seeing the front two on the grass, having become intimate with each other, was quite pleasing in a strange way. So yeah, no, completely unexpected. My pace was all over the place. I really didn't deserve to be second, but hey, listen, we'll take it for the championship points.
You didn't do quite as many laps in practice as the front boys, who seem to be doing hours and hours of practice, but equally we're back in the 420s, which we know you prefer, and suddenly the results are coming good.
Yeah, you say that, and then I look that I'm 4/10 behind in qualifying at Silverstone, so I'm not quite sure that the theory's living up in practice, but I do enjoy it more, and I think we're at Brands next, which is one of my favourite circuits, so thoroughly looking forward to that. Yeah,
we absolutely are, so we'll look forward to seeing more podiums at Brands.
And no pressure. If the front two can take each other off again, that'd be great.
Cheers, man.
Take care.
Excellent. Right, let's get in. Let's get David Rowe into
Here we go.
Box. Mr. Rowe, have you got us in the commentary box? David, have you got us in the commentary box? Oh, it's going to be a shame if we have... here we go. Are you there?
Yeah,
Hey.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Excellent stuff. What a race. So race 1, you absolutely nose to tail with Andrew Parker the whole race long. And then in race 2, absolutely hounded by Mr. Szaruta right up until that last lap.
Yeah, I've got to say the racing's absolutely brilliant. Me and Andrew had a fantastic ding dong. It was a real battle of wits, and very fair. Not can be said the same about race 2. Very disappointing, really, behaviour from Christian.
To go side by side, or try and go side by side through every single corner of 2 laps, it's probably rolling the dice once too many times for you both.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I was kind of lining up, trying to outfox him, and he just slammed in the back of me. So it wasn't very sporting, and I'm very upset about it.
I absolutely know that you would have both been giggling to yourselves in the car at the time. For the championship terms, I mean, a second and a first, it's got to be good for your overall championship.
That's brilliant. Yeah, no, I'm very happy about that, and it makes the win over Christian that much more better.
I'm sure.
Especially did he finish on the podium?
He didn't. He actually finished in 4th.
No. Okay. Thank you.
We will see you at the weekend at Silverstone for real. Congratulations, and we look forward to more success at Brands Hatch.
Thanks, guys. Top stuff. Thank you.
Alrighty, so the final person we've got to hear from, the final person we haven't heard from the podium so far. And Christian, have you got us in the commentary box?
Protest.
Yes. so obviously that first race, you got an absolute lightning start and were just never seen again.
Yeah, I don't really know what happened on the start. It's the first time we've actually got a good start, I think. So,
but I mean,
judging on the second race, it would have been quite nice to have that again, but no.
And second race, they absolutely weren't going to let you have it your own way, and they hounded you around those first few laps, and that did drop you back, I think, to 4th at one point. So in some ways, it was absolutely brilliant to watch you come back up to that first place battle, and then it just all went wrong on that last lap.
Yeah, well, obviously I blame David 100% for causing the incident.
Am I going to have to deal with 2 protests here, I wonder?
I think there's no other answer, cheesy. Just ridiculous driving, terrible.
As I said to David, I could actually hear the giggles in the cockpit from both of you. It was really good to watch, and so thank you for that great battle. And it's a shame that it resulted in no podium, but ultimately three wins to your championship so far is pretty good going, I would say.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's just a shame Dave had to resort to dirty tactics to stop me from winning, isn't it? It's just,
Okay, well done. Looking forward to more of the same at Brands Hatch. So congratulations.
Cheers, mate.
There you go, Scott. You can hear the slight tongue-in-cheekness, but equally, I wouldn't be surprised if I see a couple of protests there.
It was never going to be a dull pair of introducing those 2, was it? It was never going to be dull. Those 2.
Yeah.
And the reaction in the chat before, when I think Christian Szaruta, no, Dave Rowe, something along the lines of like death to Christian Szaruta, and all Christian could respond with was lol.
They love it. They're constantly at it. They're all the way through, and even in practice and stuff, you can hear them all going at each other. They absolutely love the rivalry.
I guess he keeps asking the question. 2 questions. 1, when is Christian going to get back into occasion for real? And 2, when's David going to have a go? Because of course, if he can translate, all right. I know sometimes sim pace doesn't always translate to real world pace. I mean that in a nice way I can put it, because obviously I don't know how much driving David's done, but it'd be quite interesting to see if he does manage to get out into one of his cars for real and actually gives it a go, whereabouts he stands in terms of pace. Because if it's anything like his sim pace, I think he'd be pretty tasty behind the wheel on one of his own cars.
Interestingly, he has done races in the past and has been very successful in those races. He's done some endurance racing in a kind of hybrid Caterham, and also done the Ford the Fiesta Challenge as well. So he's been winning races out there. So yes, he is one that does translate that pace into the real world, and we will see Christian, I'm sure, back in a car one day. At the moment, he is still planning weddings, and he's recently moved houses and things like that. So there's other things taking his budget.
When you put it like that, doesn't surprise me, of course, and those things are not cheap. So, but hopefully hopefully we see him back one day, because I think with his pace that he's had over the last few years, particularly the time when he's been racing before, hopefully those times aren't the last that we saw him in, and it's not just on the sim that we see him to race, because no, Christian's quite a capable Caterham racer, and if he does get the chance to come back, then it'd be quite nice to see it, as it would be for everyone else that's real world race as well.
Absolutely.
I guess we should round off by just reminding ourselves of where we go to once again. So we've got Brands Hatch coming up after, of course, the real world races at Silverstone GP. 3rd of August is when we go to Brands Hatch, and it's the 31st of August, a few weeks later, we go to Croft. And that's when we go back to the Caterham Academy cars, because we have the 420R back again for Brands Hatch Indy. Then we have, as we said, the back to the Caterham Academy car for Croft, then for Snetterton on the 300 circuit. Then we finish back in the 420Rs at Cadwell Park on the 12th of October. Of course, Chris, you'll be out next weekend in your 420R on the Caterham 7 Championship UK. How are you feeling about it?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting to Silverstone and, stretching the legs of the car. As we've seen tonight, it's such a wide, massively open track with fast sweeping bends. In a Caterham, you could probably get 8 cars wide if you want to, and certainly it seems like in Caterham racing, for real, people want to do that. So we will see, and it's all going to be live streamed again, so across the Caterham YouTube and the BRSCC YouTube channels.
I believe so, yes. Just for the record, for those who've been watching the streams, just in case, if anyone's expecting myself on commentary, it won't be on this one, because it's been provided by a different live stream, because it is a race being shared by another championship with another club, and it's their live stream providers that are putting it out. So it won't be me on comms, but it will be a very capable friend of mine, Mr. Dave Goddard. So if anyone watching does happen to watch the streams, do be nice and do go and watch and show Dave some support. He's a brilliant commentator that I do respect and revere as a good friend of mine also. And so do be sure to watch out for those ones on those races. And do enjoy it, because of course the live streams that we've had have been fantastic so far. Again, we had brilliant live stream coverage at Knockhill, which I was very privileged to be a part of and commentate on. Of course, we had you in the commentary box alongside me as well, Chris, which was some brilliant racing up and down from the Academy all the way through to for the 7 Championship UK, which of course you were starring in yourself. If you want to watch those all back, head to the Caterham and BRSCC YouTube channels to watch them back in their entirety. And you can do the same again for Caterham, and I think it will be BRSCC as well for those races on our channel as well, or at least it'll be on Caterham's on their Facebook and YouTube channels for those who want to watch what's going on at Silverstone on the Grand Prix circuit. Next weekend on July, I get the date right now, July 4th and 5th. It's 3rd or 4th and 4th and 5th, one of the two. I'll get it right so you can have a look. 3rd and 4th, so July 3rd and 4th, and you'll be able to watch it on those channels. So I guess all left for me to say before we go into the outro with our partners is, first of all, Chris, best of luck. Hopefully it all goes well for you at Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. Fingers crossed that you can come home with a strong result. So your best result so far has been 4th place, so you're even one spot away from the podium, haven't you?
That's right. It'd be nice to pick up some pots by the end of the year. So each time out now, we will see if we can tick that result further up. We got qualified in 3rd place at Knockhill, which was a nice sort of start to the weekend. And yet 4th place was not a bad result from one of those races. But I'd like to take some silverware for sure.
Yeah, and of course, you had your first experience of Super Pole. So how did you find that? That was a new experience for you, of course, being your first time doing it in the 420R. So that must have been something to try and experience. Yeah,
I really like single shot kind of qualifying. That trying to get up to pace, especially with the slick tyres. You've got to get them warmed up in time for your lap, and it's always compromised. So it's kind of nice to just see who gets up to speed quick. And 3rd place was a great result. Got a point for that as well, because there are points on offer for our Super Pole.
Stuff. Well, best of luck, of course, to yourself, Chris, and let's just thank everyone for watching, of course, who's been watching tonight. Be sure to keep on liking and subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell icon, which means that every time we go live with a live broadcast here of our caterhamracer.com activities, you can, of course, keep tabs with it. And let's round out by saying again, thank you for watching. If you are heading to Silverstone, because I think there should be spectator tickets, do head to the Silverstone website or get in touch with them if you're going to watch. And if you are watching trackside, hopefully enjoy it. If you're going to watch the live streams, enjoy it. Be in the comments and show support to all the guys out there racing, including Chris in the Caterham 7 Championship UK. And of course, we've finally ran off by giving thanks to our sponsors, because of course the caterhamracer.com Season 5 Championship is sponsored by Just Add Lightness, high-performance LED lights and accessories for the Caterham 7, by Design Display Structures, immerse yourself in worlds beyond with bespoke projection screens, and of course by DPR Motorsport, your competitive advantage, in association with Darren, Burke Performance Driver Coach. From myself, Scott Woodwiss, from Chris Hutchinson, and from all of us here at caterhamracer.com, thanks again for watching and supporting. Watch the live racing next weekend of the real Caterhams on the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit, and we'll be back in a few weeks' time when we get to go to the Brands Hatch Indy circuit, back with the 420Rs for more exciting esports action here on caterhamracer.com. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.